What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So it looks like there is an absolute ton of Pokemon information coming soon. Now, later on tonight, actually, we'll have a conference that most likely isn't about anything with the Switch. Just to be completely honest, I'll talk a bit about that. But we do have a full Pokemon Direct scheduled for next week that will have to do with Pokemon Sword and Shield. So we'll go over all of that so you can figure out when everything is, and you can decide if you want to tune into the stream that they'll have and everything. And I'll be streaming it here, at least the one next week for Sword and Shield, as I'm pretty interested in that. We also found out from AMD a bit more information about their GPUs that are going to pretty much lead into what the PS5 and the next Xbox trying to use, Navi, and we found out a bit more information about that we will cover, and it looks like Death Stranding is going to be getting quite a bit more information, so we can still be confused about it, I'm sure. As always, guys, enjoy these videos, make sure the like button, it does help out, and get subscribed, because going to E3, there's going to be a metric ton of stuff to keep up to date with, and I'll do my best to do that here for you. And of course, we'll have all kinds of streams and some fun stuff at E3, so make sure you subscribe with notifications on so you can not miss a stream or anything, and we'll have a good time. Today, we're actually going to start with some Dragon Quest news, as Square Enix actually announced that, well, they're going to be holding a stream to show off Dragon Quest on the mobile phones. Yeah, it looks like that information we found out about there being some information for Dragon Quest in Famitsu coming up. It looks like it's actually going to be most likely about a cell phone game, and it's not surprising to hear that Square would be, again, pushing more and more towards phones, as we've seen them do that. It's good recurring revenue that can also fuel money for, well, actual big projects on consoles. And of course, we've seen Octopath make the jump as well, a different type, but still technically Octopath in some way. Now, this is actually going to take place on noon time, Japanese Standard Time on the 3rd, which is right around 11 p.m. on the 2nd of June in Eastern Standard Time, so you can kind of check it out from there. But it's most likely, I think, going to be a gacha-style game in the Dragon Quest universe. Also, if you're a fan of the Dying Light series, of course, we had Dying Light release what feels like forever ago now. They did an expansion to it and everything, and it was a game that came out and didn't get the best Metacritic scores, but people actually really seem to like the game. Well, it sounds like they have something in mind outside of Dying Light 2 for the Switch. It's very interesting. It doesn't sound like Dying Light 2 is in any way being planned for the Switch, but they have something else. Actually, when talking to WCCF Tech, the technical officer actually said that there is something planned for later on this year, but they don't have anything to announce at this time, which leads me to believe that they'll in some way be present at E3 with something for the Switch. And if I had to take a guess, they're probably bringing the first Dying Light over to the Switch, just kind of porting it over. And I don't think that's a bad thing necessarily. It is an older port, but there's probably a lot of people there who didn't actually play the game and would get a kick out of it, because it is actually a really fun game. I like Dying Light. I thought it was good. I thought it was underappreciated, to be honest, by a lot of the media. But it'll be cool if it gets a second life on the Switch, and of course helps them fund different things like the second one, for example, and any other projects going forward. Either way, it'd be cool to see Dying Light actually go to a system like the Switch, and hey, it technically becomes portable then as well. Also, I want to ask you a question. If Dreams allowed you to sell your game that you have created in that game, so it's obviously a big game builder, right? That's what Dreams technically is. People are building all kinds of stuff. Someone actually built out X-Wing versus TIE Fighter, and you could technically fly around as an X-Wing, shoot up a Star Destroyer and everything. It's pretty cool. And of course, we've seen PT and all kinds of other stuff. What if you could sell your game? Like, what if you built a game there and sell it? Would you be more inclined to get into the game, start building in hopes that you could eventually just sell it off and, you know, become a successful game creator from Dreams? Well, it sounds like Media Molecule is actually exploring that idea. They also don't want to be in early access for very long, which isn't surprising to hear that, as I'm sure they would want to launch full-fledged, ready to go, after, of course, seeing kind of this early access closed beta, essentially, where you have to buy into it. But it's kind of an interesting idea, because right now they share everything for free, right? You go on there, you download a game, you play it, you go, oh, this is cool, or oh, this is terrible, and then you move on to the next one. It's fun for people who don't necessarily want to build and just try out all kinds of cool ideas. And if they do start selling things, it makes me wonder if it would actually hurt the game, because then you might have to buy everything as you go, and maybe some people just don't want to make things free. It's an interesting situation. Maybe there's some sort of screening process where they decide if your game is worth being sold, or if it's just one of those cash grabs you're trying to put up for $1. Interesting idea there, though. People might actually become much more interested in Dreams if they find out that they could maybe make a career out of it. And guys, some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. We're gonna start with the Pokemon Direct and Conference right away, because you actually have something to watch tonight if you're a Pokemon fan, because they're going to be streaming a conference similar, I think, to what they did last year with Pokemon Let's Go, Pikachu, and Eevee, and then they kind of put out a roadmap for this year's Pokemon saying, hey guys, a mainline hardcore Pokemon RPG is still coming next year. This year we're doing Pokemon Let's Go. Also, here's Pokemon Quest, and they kind of went on with that, right? Like, we heard about all this different stuff. It sounds like it's gonna be something similar to that. Now, I don't know if there's gonna be anything about Pokemon Sword and Shield, and the reason I say that is because there is also a direct for next week. We're gonna talk about that in a second, but let's actually start with this conference and when you can expect to watch it, because it does appear to be streamed. Like last year, if you remember, there were a lot of tweets online about it on Twitter. They were updating as they went, and they exploded in traffic. I feel like the Pokemon company saw that, and they're deciding to actually stream it this year. Even if it's all in Japanese, it'll probably still be really interesting when they put up the big infographs and everything and announce some different things. Well, looks like you'll be able to tune in tonight, the 28th at 6 p.m. Pacific time, 9 p.m. Eastern time. They do have a stream already set up, so you can kind of tune in already. I'll link it down below in the sources if you want to make sure you have that up. It looks like they're streaming on Twitch that I've seen. I assume they'll also be on YouTube and anywhere else they can be as well. Maybe Nico for the Japan audience and everything. But this is very interesting to hear about this conference, because I thought we would just have a direct, and we're getting on the wire for this direct because it's next week. It's literally a few days before E3 starts. But the conference is interesting because I don't think it's going to necessarily have anything to do with like the Switch, for example. I think it's mostly going to be merchandise, any events that they're doing coming up, and then most likely some mobile games, some mobile stuff, right? That's why they're separating them. That's why they made sure everyone knew that there was also direct next week. Now, there is a mobile game in development right now that they're doing with DNA, and that's scheduled to be out before March 2019 to finish up in this fiscal year. Now, I think that's going to be a big gacha style game where you, of course, roll loot boxes and stuff to get your Pokemon, and you kind of play through it like that. That's my assumption, and I assume they might take the time to show it there and kind of talk about it and maybe even give a release date. They could do anything here. It's their Pokemon conference. Most likely, I think they're going to try to impress investors and people in the media, though, to be honest. But it's interesting to think about all the stuff that's happening with this conference and then direct. So the direct that's actually taking place is it's next week, June 5th, and it's actually going to be starting 9 a.m. Eastern, 6 a.m. Pacific time for about 15 minutes of information for Pokemon Sword and Pokemon Shield. Now, Pokemon Sword and Shield, of course, we've already had kind of a mild reveal, right? We've seen at least gameplay of it and everything. They talked to us about it. They showed the region and everything. But there's still a lot of questions, like when does it come out, for example? We don't really know the release date for it at all. We don't know about any possible bundles, like they did the Eevee and Pikachu bundle, obviously, last year with the system and everything. We kind of thought that there would be a Switch Mini before the Pokemon Sword and Shield came out. I guess they won't be revealing it on June 5th unless Nintendo slips it in there on Twitter and is like, hey, Switch Mini coming in June or July or something, and then they can talk about it June 5th. Most likely they won't, though. So bundles would be something with, I assume, the regular Switch now that we know, of course, and they might put it in there with a themed Switch. Trust me, the Pokemon company, Nintendo, love to take this stuff and mash it together, merchandise it, and put it out there. We might get special Joy-Cons. It's been a while since we've had a themed colored Joy-Con, so I wouldn't be shocked to see that. And then, of course, they'll probably talk about the evolutions of the starting Pokemon. We'll probably find out about all their new ones and everything, and then any other features they're going to add into what is the first console version of Pokemon. And it's going to be really exciting to see it, like mainline Pokemon. We've had some other ones like Pokemon XD and Coliseum and stuff, but this is like the first real full-on Pokemon hardcore RPG. So exciting stuff there. I'll be streaming next week on June 5th when we have that Pokemon Direct. Not necessarily the one tonight, because I don't think that's going to have as much to do with video games in general. I think it's going to be mostly just like the mobile titles and merchandise and stuff. But either way, if you're a Pokemon fan, you're going to be really excited over the next 7 days starting tonight, so get ready. Next up, let's talk about Death Stranding, because we are going to find out more information about this. This seems to actually be like, I don't know if it's a new trailer, because we've already been confused by enough trailers. I'm ready to find out actual information about this thing, whether it's an actual description of the plot or a release date. There's a lot of cool stuff they could do. Maybe some lengthened gameplay, like we actually see someone sitting down and playing it, and then maybe Kojima explaining what the game is. But March, we're actually going to find out more about this. I'm sorry, the 29th. So May 29th, we're going to find out more about this. They posted actually on Twitter, as you're seeing here, and it simply says the countdown of Death Stranding has started. May 29th, create the rope. Whatever that means. I know. I mean, they also put out tons of different teasers leading up to this today or yesterday. They put it up, and then today they'll probably put more up as they lead into the 29th. So exciting stuff there for Death Stranding. I'm just ready to see something about it. I still kind of have a release schedule in mind for Sony's last first-party games, their exclusives lined up. I think Last of Us 2 is going to be this holiday. I think Death Stranding is going to be a spring 2020 release, and I think Ghost of Tsushima is going to finish up 2020, releasing just before the PlayStation 5, possibly in like September, for example, and then 2 months later, November, we see the PlayStation 5 release. So exciting stuff. I just want to not be confused by Death Stranding, so here's hoping. Next up, let's talk about Computex and AMD and kind of the GPU architecture that's going to be leading into the PlayStation 5, as well as CPU, actually, as AMD actually took the stage there and showed off a ton of stuff that's probably making, I assume right now, Intel sweat and NVIDIA sweat, as they unveiled finally information about Navi and when we can even get our hands on it, because we'll be able to get our hands on this stuff in July, which means we're going to get full benchmarks and all kinds of stuff like a year and a half out from when like the PlayStation 5, or we assume the next Xbox, would even release with this technology. So this is really exciting stuff. But at Computex, we found out that Navi will be coming out, like I said, in July. And then there was a bunch of information that also talked about how the PlayStation 5 would also be using the Navi GPU setup and Ryzen Zen 2 CPU. Now, they showed the Ryzen 3000 series and everything, and it looks amazing. Like, they have some really good stuff there. But they did say that the Navi GPU won't use the GCN architecture, which was from the previous AMD cards. It's going to use a new RDNA architecture that's been developed by AMD, and there is a lot of benefit to using that. Tons of benefits. They actually kind of outline them. 1.5 times performance per watt, so even though it's going to be using the same power, it'll get much more performance. 1.25 performance per clock improvement over the previous architecture, new compute unit design, multi-level cache hierarchy, and then streamlined graphics pipeline that's going to be optimized heavily for performance per clock and high clock speeds. So this is really exciting. Now, we're going to find out in July, like I said, the RX 5700, which we don't know pricing or anything else really about it outside of the name. And then they showed, all right, so they showed, of course, benchmarks. Here's what I'm going to tell you about these benchmarks. AMD, NVIDIA, Intel, they always show us the best case scenario. I would wait until July when people on YouTube, for example, there's tons of them, I'm sure you know them, who would benchmark them. Of course, Linus Tech Tips, Gamers Nexus, there's a ton of them out there that will benchmark them and actually show us everything we need to know about them. Because currently, AMD is saying that it's a 10% increase over the RTX 2070, which is very impressive, but I want to see that actually in like real world like terms. So we'll keep an eye on that. One thing's for sure, it seems like the PlayStation 5 is going to be a beast compared to the PS4 by quite a bit. It's exciting stuff. We have to wait, of course, till the end of 2020, but I wouldn't be shocked if PlayStation showed up to the PlayStation Experience and actually showed off a bit more about the PS5 outside of a Spider-Man loading screen. And our last bit of news, let's talk about a game that came out a while ago. I believe it was 2007, PlayStation 3, 360 and everything. And I really liked the game, and that's the Simpsons game. Do you remember that? It feels like forever ago. It's kind of because it was. Like I said, it was a long time ago. But what's really cool about this is it looks like, for some reason, you can actually see this here, that they're actually going to have a Simpsons panel at E3 2019, the producers and writers of The Simpsons, June 11th, 6 p.m. I'm not really sure why they would be there unless there's possibly, I'm going to say possibly, another game in the works maybe? I mean, why not, right? Sure, the series on TV is kind of on the decline, but I think a lot of us would get a kick out of a hit and run too, right? A hit and run remaster, even something like that, a remaster, yeah, I know, but it was still, even having that, or maybe just a full-on game similar to what we had with the Simpsons game. There's a lot of cool stuff they can do. It's definitely a panel we want to keep an eye on because I think it's going to kind of fall by the wayside unless they really do have something like that to announce, but I'll keep an eye on it, letting you guys know what this turns out to be exactly. And we're gonna finish up with our comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Bama Guy saying, can we get Conker's Bad Fur Day on the Switch? So here's the thing. I don't think Microsoft is necessarily against having something like a Conker's Bad Fur Day on the Switch. I would like to actually see that. Now, Rare, of course, they've said several times that they have no problem with another company working on their IPs at all, like as long as they trust them and they, you know, the company is on the up and up and everything. I do wonder if Microsoft would look at something like how they've done Rare Replay before, maybe come up with their own set of games that they kind of throw together and put on the Switch for, you know, space constraints and stuff. Because I believe the Rare Replay, you can pick what you want to install and stuff, I believe, but it was pretty large. However, I don't think having Conker's Bad Fur Day is completely I don't think that's insane or anything. I don't think it's like out of left field even, to be honest. Nintendo has had no problem with really, like, games that have been censored by Sony, right? We've seen this. Nintendo has no problem with. So yeah, Conker's Bad Fur Day would be awesome if they brought it over to the Switch and just threw it on there. I mean, we've seen Turok, right? From the 64, so let's get Conker over there. Let's do that. That would be really cool. And you know what? I think it would sell really well too. Ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, make sure to hit the like button. It does help out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about today, whether it is the Pokemon conference tonight or the Pokemon Direct next week. What do you think they're gonna talk about at the conference tonight? Because honestly, I think it's a mobile game, but I guess it could be anything, right? They could have a roadmap set up. Who knows? It'd be really cool though if they had something other than a mobile game to talk about, but I feel like that's what they're going to show up with. But hey, maybe I'm wrong, and maybe you have an idea of what they could show there. Exciting stuff either way. And then what do you think about Death Stranding? What are we going to see exactly tomorrow? Because I don't even know what's going on half the time when I watch these teasers. I don't think anyone really does. As far as I know, it's a delivery service that just keeps getting messed up on the way to delivering the package. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.